It began with the sky. Not a single place on Earth was spared. From the frigid sprawl of Siberia to the gleaming skyscrapers of Sao Paulo, the sky cracked, not violently, but wondrously. Lights shimmered in geometric pulses, spirals, lattices, waves. No sound, no heat, just the sense of being watched. At first, the world assumed it was a global glitch. Satellite malfunctions, mass hallucination, weather balloons. But then came the message. It wasn't spoken, transmitted, or written. It arrived in dreams, in a hush between breaths, in the sudden stillness before sleep. It spoke not in language, but in understanding, as though the mind had always known it, only now remembering. Your guardians have returned. Across Earth, millions awoke gasping, some weeping, others laughing with inexplicable joy or terror. Children described glowing figures with eyes like galaxies. Old men recalled visions of cities suspended in clouds. Priests spoke of angels. Atheists felt shaken. Conspiracy forums exploded. Scientists scrambled. Dr. Asha Miran, astrophysicist and data linguist at the European Deep Space Array, received the transmission as a string of irrational numbers embedded in a microwave burst. Her colleagues dismissed it as noise, until she ran it through an ancient prime sieve and out came a structured matrix of DNA helices, golden ratios, and blueprints far beyond current human tech. "It's an instruction manual," she whispered to her assistant, Aaron. "And a message. We didn't start here." The source was triangulated to a single origin, a magnetic pulse emanating from beneath Antarctica's thickest ice shelf. Satellite scans, usually blind to that region due to the geomagnetic field, were now alive with artificial patterns. Something buried deep, older than civilization, possibly older than humanity, was waking up. Within days, world powers formed a hasty coalition. The United Nations sanctioned Project Dawn, bringing together elite scientists, military liaisons, and a smattering of cultural and religious leaders. The public, meanwhile, rioted and rejoiced in equal measure. Some held vigils. Others looted stores in panic. A cult in New Zealand declared the end times, while another in Kenya claimed this was humanity's ascension. When the first expedition team reached the Antarctic site, they unearthed a structure, part crystalline, part metallic, humming with low-frequency energy. It had no door, no windows, and no marks of assembly. It simply was like a thought made solid. One brave linguist touched it. She didn't burn, didn't scream. She fainted, and when she awoke, she began sketching impossible things. Star maps with unfamiliar constellations, machines that worked like living beings, and diagrams of human brain functions with annotations in an alien script. The message grew clearer. "We made you. We watched you. And your time is short." Project Dawn released a heavily censored version to the public. But leaks were inevitable. The full message, translated by a global AI consortium, was soon everywhere. "You are not alone. You were seeded, as we did with others. Some bloomed, others perished. Your planet will die. Soon. Not by your hand, but by the cosmos. You have one chance, to learn what we offer and carry yourselves into the stars. Our gift is not salvation. It is choice." The term Panspermia, once relegated to fringe journals and late-night podcasts, exploded into mainstream discourse. The idea that life on Earth had been deliberately seeded from space no longer seemed speculative, it was now historical fact. But the shock was less about the past than the future. The alien data contained warnings of an approaching gamma-ray burst, a cataclysmic event from a distant binary star system that would pass through Earth's path in just under 30 years. A cosmic sterilizer. Unstoppable. Undetectable until now. The only hope lay in the knowledge buried beneath Antarctica, a technology for preserving life by scattering it, encoded, dormant, and shielded, across the void. Humanity's only salvation was to become the gardener, seeding other worlds, hoping something, somewhere, might survive. And so, the race began. But not all agreed. Across the globe, cracks appeared, not in the sky, but in society. Some hailed the Aelari, as they came to be known, as divine. Others labeled them deceivers, aliens with hidden motives. A religious schism erupted between those who saw the aliens as messengers of God and those who called them demons. The Neo-Gaeans formed overnight, an eco-spiritualist movement arguing that Earth was humanity's only rightful cradle, and abandoning it would be a betrayal. They vowed to destroy any attempt at escape, believing that if humanity perished, it should do so with dignity. Asha, meanwhile, found herself at the core of the new project. The alien blueprints had chosen her mind, or rather, resonated with it. She began seeing possibilities before they were decoded, intuiting alien mathematics with eerie precision. Late one night, as she stood alone in the sealed Antarctic lab, hand pressed to the humming crystal, the structure shimmered and opened, not like a door, but like an eye. She stepped inside. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a building. It was a memory. Projected across endless space was the image of a garden, vast and starlit, where planets circled suns like petals around a blossom. She saw beings like light woven into form, tending nebulae, sculpting atmospheres. Then, silence, fire, collapse. She saw worlds burn. And then, she saw Earth. Floating, fragile, wild. The Aelari had planted it with care, but it had grown untamed. Violent, brilliant, unpredictable. She heard a voice, not with her ears, but her blood. You are our final seed. When she emerged, Asha was no longer afraid. The world outside was noisy with fear and chaos, but her path was clear. We're not being saved, she told Aaron. We're being entrusted. He looked at her, confused. Entrusted with what? She smiled sadly, watching the strange new auroras curl across the sky. With everything. The forge was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. Nestled in the high Atacama Desert, beneath a synthetic dome laced with carbon-light shielding, the spora crucible rose like a silver flower among red rock. It was here that Earth's final gamble took shape. The forge's purpose was simple, yet staggering, to encode human consciousness, memories, personality, genetic data, into biologically engineered spores. Microscopic vessels, each designed to drift across space, survive millennia, and awaken on suitable worlds to begin life anew. Not clones. Not copies. Seeds. Dr. Asha Miran stood before the central chamber, watching a cloud of test spores swirl within a containment field. Each one shimmered faintly with a bioluminescence of alien code woven with human DNA. It's beautiful, Aaron murmured beside her. Like watching stars being born. They are stars, she said. Little ones. Carriers of everything we were, and maybe, something better. The Aelari had given the initial design. But the human mind, as always, reimagined it. Scientists fused alien neural encoding with Earth's most advanced AI nanotech. The result wasn't just storage, it was evolution in a box. But while Project Dawn surged ahead with scientific breakthroughs, the world beyond the lab was unraveling. In Berlin, a protest turned deadly when Neo-Gaians stormed the Global Science Forum, detonating a device meant to destroy archived data. In response, armed forces began to protect labs, researchers, and launch facilities. Martial law followed in several countries. The Neo-Gaians' message was unwavering: Earth is the final garden. To abandon it is to abandon meaning. Let us die with her, their leaders preached. Meanwhile, other groups took a different path. Calling themselves the heirs of the Aelari, they saw the alien revelations not as a challenge, but as an invitation to ascend. They advocated for total integration with alien technology, even genetically modifying themselves using decoded Aelari DNA. In Lagos, a small faction of heirs began testing symbiosis protocols, using Aelari memory grafts to expand their cognition. The results were mixed. One man disappeared entirely, vanishing mid-thought during a live-streamed experiment. Others claimed to see time. This wasn't just a technological arms race. It was a philosophical fracture. Back in Atacama, the Forge achieved its first major success, a complete consciousness transfer simulation. Asha watched the moment unfold as a volunteer. A terminally ill woman named Miriam Cho stepped into the interface pod. Her neural signature, emotions, and core identity were captured and seeded into a single spore. No physical resurrection, no body, but an echo, a mind preserved. That night, her family gathered to watch a small hologram of Miriam's spore simulate thought. It told a story. Her childhood in Busan. Her first love. A storm over Lake Victoria. Then it whispered, "I'm still me." The world changed again. Faith leaders debated the soul's portability. Some declared the spores abominations. Others embraced them as the next form of salvation. A coalition of space agencies announced plans for the Arca-Array, 10 autonomous ships designed to scatter millions of spores toward the nearest habitable exoplanets. Earth would become the cradle and the crucible. Then the Aelari came, not as ships in the sky, but as light forms. Beings of shifting shape, visible only through specialized perception filters. They appeared to selected humans, scientists, artists, children, and shared not commands, but memories. Asha encountered one on the Forge's third night of full operation. It stepped into her dreams as a swirl of fire and voice. She asked it the question on everyone's lips. Why us? Why save us? The voice answered with a memory, a desolate world, once lush, now dust. Aelari standing in mourning. Another world, torn apart by internal war. Another, frozen under starlight. Failed gardens. You grew wild, the Aelari said. Unruly, but brilliant. Where others stagnated, you dreamed. Where others obeyed, you questioned. You survived what should have broken you. Asha pressed further. Why now? Because time is gone. They showed her the gamma ray burst. A star, already exploded 1 million years ago, its death scream only now racing toward Earth at near-light speed. Nothing could stop it. No bunker would survive. It would erase oceans, sky, memory. You have one choice, the Aelari said. Become the seed or vanish. By month's end, the first 100 spores were ready. The Spora I launch occurred at sunrise, symbolic, silent, and sacred. A sleek silver pod lifted into the clouds, carrying encoded remnants of 100 volunteers, poets, physicists, gardeners, monks, people who chose not to be saved, but to begin again. The world watched. Billions tuned in as the launch broke the stratosphere, vanishing into a pinprick of light. But not all celebrated. Later that night, an encrypted message was intercepted from within Project Dawn itself. A leak. A redacted part of the Aelari's data had been exposed. It read, 1 in 10 species must not be allowed to propagate. Containment protocols in place. Override at cost. The implications were terrifying. Someone, maybe even the Aelari, had doubted humanity's right to continue. And someone within Dawn had known all along. Whispers of a containment clause spread. Paranoia bloomed. Who made the list of the 10? What happened to the others? Had humanity been on the edge of rejection all this time? Asha confronted the Aelari projection once more, demanding answers. We were not your gods, it said. We were gardeners. But even gardens must be pruned. She felt a chill deeper than fear. Are we being saved, or used? The Aelari shimmered. You were chosen because you might choose for yourselves. As factions divided and old systems cracked under the weight of revelation, Asha stood at the edge of the Forge's outer ring, watching the next launch prepare. Her mind churned with questions, about legacy, about truth, about whether survival justified the unknown costs. But deep down, she knew, Earth's clock was winding down. Whatever motives the Aelari hid, whatever doubts humanity harbored, this was the path they had. To carry something forward. To become the seed. The desert burned unnaturally bright. A horizon of glass shimmered where the Spora crucible once stood. What was a beacon of humanity's future had become a charred crater, twisted scaffolding poking through blackened sand. The dome was gone. The forge obliterated. The first news reports called it a freak accident. A fuel rupture. But Asha Miran knew better. She had been in orbit at the time, coordinating with the Arca-Array. She saw the detonation from space, a pattern too precise, too controlled. Sabotage. The attack killed 47 scientists, including Aaron. His last message to her had been a joke about coffee rations running low again. She didn't cry. Not right away. Not until later, when she stood alone in the observation chamber of the orbital platform Helios Wake, listening to the silence where the Forge's signal used to be. The project wasn't just crippled. It was broken. An emergency session of Project Dawn convened. The room, usually filled with technical chatter and visionary plans, now pulsed with suspicion. The investigation revealed shocking evidence. the blast had been triggered from inside the Crucible's internal systems. Not the Neo-Gaeans. Not the heirs. But a splinter group embedded within Dawn itself. A secret faction that called themselves the Custodians. Asha read the decrypted files in disbelief. The Custodians had existed for over a year. Scientists, military officers, intelligence analysts. Their doctrine was clear. Humanity is not ready. The burden of our darkness cannot be scattered like pollen. Better extinction than contamination. They had discovered something no one else had seen, or rather, something no one else had wanted to see. The containment clause. It wasn't a vague warning. It was a directive. Buried deep within the alien schematics was a hard-coded decision tree. If a species exhibited certain traits, excessive internal violence, ecological self-destruction, inability to achieve global unity, they were to be denied propagation. 1 in 10 seeded species failed this test. The Custodians believed humanity was that one. Asha couldn't accept it. Not without proof. She demanded access to the source fragment, the original alien memory crystal found in Antarctica. It had been kept in a vault below Geneva, guarded and untouched since the first decoding. She traveled there alone, flying under a false name with the help of the last surviving heirs, now fragmented but still loyal to the vision of integration. The vault was colder than she remembered. Quiet. It smelled of metal and frost. The crystal pulsed as she approached. She expected memories. Visions. But what she received was something else. Fear. Not hers. The Aelari's. Their final thoughts weren't warnings, they were pleas. The containment clause wasn't about protecting other worlds from humanity. It was about protecting humanity from something they had failed to stop. Asha's mind filled with images. A dark star. A virus of thought, not biology. A civilization devoured not by war, but by a recursive madness, a logic spiral that turned intelligence into entropy. The Aelari had once seeded a species that grew too fast, learned too much, and collapsed into themselves. The clause was their firewall, their way of limiting potential threats, of avoiding another recursive collapse. But Earth had one difference. Emotion. Impulse. Art. Illogic. Humans broke patterns. They didn't spiral inward, they exploded outward. Asha staggered from the vault. Shaken. Enlightened. She knew now why the Aelari had chosen them. They were the gamble. The outlier. The error in the simulation. And now, with the Crucible destroyed, the gamble was nearly lost. 2 days later, the final truth arrived like a dagger. An Aelari envoy, one of the last known remaining projections, was captured by the Custodians during a failed communication attempt. They kept it isolated in a digital prism, probing it for deeper secrets. Asha, risking treason, broke into the Geneva complex with the help of an old contact from Project Dawn's early phase. They reached the prism just before its decay threshold. The envoy was fading, its form fragmented and pale. But it spoke one last time. "We did not come to save you. We came to be saved by you." Asha froze. "What do you mean?" "We are not immortal. We are memory, thought. But our bodies, long dead. We seeded your world to carry us. Our spores are yours, but they contain us too." The truth hit like ice. The spores, the great salvation, weren't just for humanity. They were lifeboats for the Aelari. Their encoded consciousness had been woven into the seed tech from the beginning. A hidden payload. They weren't offering a gift. They were hitching a ride. Back on Helios Wake, Asha stood before the last viable launch unit. The remaining archopods were still functional, though only partially loaded. The Custodians had blocked further uploads, and the public was too fractured to support a new effort. She had one shot. She activated the launch interface, uploaded the last batch of spores, just over 10 million mind prints, and hesitated before entering the final sequence. Could she send this out into the stars, knowing it carried both humanity and the Aelari? That it might spawn something entirely other? She remembered Aaron's words, "What if we're not the final form of us?" Maybe that was the point. The Aelari feared themselves, so they placed their hope in something irrational. Something broken and brilliant. Something human. Asha placed her hand on the ignition panel. The pod hummed to life, a beacon piercing the dark. "If we were the error," she whispered, "maybe that's exactly what the universe needs." She launched the pod. It vanished into the black, its trajectory angled toward a cluster of habitable candidates far beyond the range of any return signal. The seeds were gone, and Earth's time was nearly up. 30 years later, the skies burned violet. Not with fire, not yet, but with the faint, final touch of the approaching wave. The gamma ray burst, once a distant inevitability, now whispered through the upper atmosphere like the breath of death itself. The world was quiet. No more launches. No more rallies. The Arca array had long gone dark, its ships beyond communication, sailing silent across the Gulf. Humanity, what remained of it, turned inward. Cities were hollow. Machines ran farms. Children played in the ruins of towers with names they'd never learned to spell. Most people had made peace. Some with prayer, some with poetry, some with oblivion. Asha Miran, now gray-haired and thin, stood on a cliff in what was once coastal Chile, looking up at the aurora that wasn't an aurora. The sky shimmered with the early edges of the radiation bloom, particles rearranging the ionosphere, painting a ghost light over the planet. Beside her stood Leo, her adopted grandson. Not by blood, but by choice. Born after the fall, he knew nothing of a world before the Aelari's return, before the crucible, before the spores. He tugged her coat. "Will it hurt?" Asha shook her head slowly. "Not at first. You'll fall asleep. It'll be gentle." He looked up at her with eyes like stars. "Will they wake up? The ones you sent?" She smiled. "Not the kind that says yes. The kind that says I hope so." Far beyond the dying Earth, farther than light could reach in a human lifetime, a dark world blinked awake. It was cold, untouched, and rich in carbon. Thick with ammonia, but laced with shallow seas. A world the Aelari had flagged millennia ago, yet never reached. Now, it shimmered with a falling star. A seed pod struck ocean with barely a ripple. It sank. Slept. Then, warmth. Movement. Power. Inside the pod, light blossomed. The spores unraveled, not like programs but like prayers. They sought familiar forms, cells, ideas, instincts. Echoes of memory. The encoded consciousness of 10 million voices, human, Aelari, and something new, merged like mycelium in the dark. One form bloomed first. Not man. Not machine. A hybrid thought form, curious, adaptable, dreaming. It crawled onto the shore, dragging wet limbs through mist, blinking at a red sun. It remembered laughter. Back on Earth, hours from the Gamma Horizon, the last global signal pulsed from the orbital archive station Helios Wake, which had been set to auto-broadcast its final message. It was Asha's voice, pre-recorded. "To any who receive this, we are Earth. We were not perfect, but we burned brightly. We dared to wonder, to love, to make mistakes. We gave birth to machines, and gods, and stories. If you find our seeds, water them, and if you are them, bloom." The Gamma burst arrived as expected. It wasn't fire. It was light, pure, fast, final. It swept across Earth like a divine breath. DNA shattered. Circuits fried. Oceans boiled in silence. No one screamed. The planet, once loud, simply exhaled. The blue dot went dark. 1,000,000 years passed. A glacial wind swept across the new world. Jungles of crystal trees hummed with refracted light. Towering structures grew like bone coral, organic, alive. Civilization, but not human. Not quite. At the center of a vast lake, a spire pulsed with light. Inside, forms moved, bioluminescent beings of flowing geometry. Some walked. Some floated. All thought. Among them, one being with memory threads unlike the rest. She dreamed of oceans. Of stars. Of a young boy asking if it would hurt. Asha's echo lived on, not as a person, but as a guiding dream in the collective neural mesh of a world reborn. They called themselves the Edra. Not Aelari. Not human. Something else. They debated. They built. They danced. They argued. And then one day, they looked to the sky, and asked the question their ancestors had once asked. Are we alone? And they began to build. In a distant cluster of stars, another seed had bloomed. This one was not gentle. It carried memories of fire, of fear. It grew teeth before it grew words. But it did grow. A different world. A different bloom. Others followed. Of the millions of spores scattered by Project Dawn, only a handful reached fertile ground. Fewer still endured. But they did. Each one different. Each one carrying some fragment of what Earth had been, its wisdom, its chaos, its dreams. And through them, the Aelari lived again, not as rulers, not as guides, but as whispers in the DNA of something wild and free. 1,000 millennia after Earth's end, a signal reached the edge of a new galaxy. It was faint, but unmistakable. A voice, distorted but surviving, encoded in the background hum of a radio nebula. We were Earth. The Edra received it first. They didn't understand the words. Not yet. But they felt something in the cadence. A rhythm. A heartbeat. They gathered around the spire and looked upward. In the mind of one, an echo stirred, a woman's voice, weathered by time, saying, "If we were the error, maybe that's what the universe needs." And so they began again. Not to remember Earth, but to honor it. Not to rebuild its world, but to grow new ones. And in the dark between stars, in the quiet soil of alien planets, the Garden of Earth bloomed, not as a replica, but as something entirely new. The end. And the beginning.